Welcome back. We are on day 28 of this war, and today everything accelerated simultaneously in 3 different directions at once. Trump extended his deadline. Israel escalated anyway. Iran warned civilians near American bases to evacuate. And the commander of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Navy was killed in a targeted airstrike in an apartment in Bandar Abbas. Today is one of the most important days of this entire conflict to fact-check carefully because the claims being made from every direction are more contradictory, more consequential, and more difficult to verify than at any previous point. Let's go through them one by one. Trump wrote on Truth Social that as per Iranian government request, he is pausing the period of energy plant destruction by 10 days to Monday, April 6, 2026 at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And that talks are ongoing and going very well, as per Iranian government request. That specific framing demands immediate fact-checking because Iran's public position has been consistent, repeated, and unambiguous. Iran's foreign minister said on state TV on Wednesday that no negotiations have happened with the enemy until now, and we do not plan on any negotiations. Iran's parliament speaker called Trump's claims fake news. Iran's foreign ministry confirmed receiving messages through friendly countries, but denied those were negotiations. And now Trump is writing on Truth Social that Iran specifically requested a 10-day extension. Trump also said Iran had offered him 8 big boats of oil as a gesture of goodwill, and later revised that number to 10. 8 boats, then 10 boats of Iranian oil. As a goodwill gesture in negotiations that Iran says are not happening. This is no longer a disputed interpretation of diplomatic events. This is 2 governments publicly describing completely different realities about whether they are in contact with each other. Now, I want to fact-check something that appeared in the search results this morning that has received almost no mainstream coverage, and that may be the single most significant financial integrity question of this entire war. Oil trading surged minutes before Trump claimed productive talks with Iran. Oil trading surged minutes before Trump's announcement. Not hours before, not the day before, minutes before. That timing requires investigation because if anyone with foreknowledge of Trump's announcement traded oil futures before the market-moving announcement was made public, that is the definition of insider trading. This channel does not make legal determinations. But the documented sequence, oil trading surges, then Trump announces productive talks, then oil prices move 10%, is a sequence that regulators at the Commodity Futures Trading Commission are legally required to examine. We report the documented sequence. We leave the legal determination to the appropriate authorities. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said in a recorded video statement that IDF strikes in Iran will escalate and expand to additional targets and areas that assist the regime in building and operating weapons against Israeli civilians, adding that Israel will continue to hunt down the leaders and commanders of the terror regime and destroy its strategic capabilities. Escalate and expand. Those are the exact words Israel's defense minister used on the same day Trump announced a 10-day pause in energy strikes. America is pausing. Israel is escalating. Those 2 positions are not compatible within a single military alliance. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps issued its own warning Friday morning, urging civilians near U.S. military positions in the region to leave, saying, since it is our duty to eliminate the terrorist forces of the U.S. and the usurping Zionist regime who recklessly kill Iranian civilians and assassinate individuals wherever we find them, we recommend that you urgently leave the locations of the American forces to avoid any harm coming to you. Iran warning civilians to evacuate areas around American bases, while Trump announces talks are going very well. Both of those things happened within hours of each other on Friday morning. Now, let's talk about Alireza Tangsiri, because his killing is one of the most strategically significant targeted strikes of this entire 28-day conflict, and it is being underreported relative to its importance. The Israeli military killed Alireza Tangsiri, the naval commander of Iran's Revolutionary Guard, in an overnight attack. The commander was in an apartment hideout in the area of Bandar Abbas, a port city in southern Iran, with other Revolutionary Guard officers at the time of the attack. Tangsiri is the latest senior Iranian official to be targeted and killed since Israel and the United States began their coordinated attacks on February 28th. He oversaw the naval forces' testing of drones and cruise missiles and was directly responsible, according to Israeli Defense Minister Katz, for the terrorist act of bombing and blocking the Strait of Hormuz. The man who commanded the force that closed the Strait of Hormuz has been killed. His deputy and other senior Navy command officials were also killed in the same strike. That is the decapitation of the operational leadership of the force responsible for the single most economically consequential action of this entire war. Traffic through the strait has fallen by 90%, sending global oil prices skyrocketing and inflicting alarming shortages on Asian nations in particular. 90% reduction in Hormuz traffic. The commander responsible for that is now dead. Whether his death changes, Iran's Hormuz policy depends entirely on whether his successor continues the same operational posture, which Iran's parliament is currently working to codify into law. Iranian news agencies quoted a lawmaker as saying, "Parliament is pursuing a plan to formally codify Iran's sovereignty, control, and oversight over the Strait of Hormuz, while also creating a source of revenue through the collection of fees." Iran is not just blocking the strait as a military tactic. Iran's parliament is writing a law to permanently codify Iranian sovereignty over international waters and to institutionalize toll collection as a legal revenue stream. Killing the naval commander who enforced the blockade does not repeal the law his parliament is writing to replace him. If Iran's parliament passes that legislation, every future Iranian government, regardless of who is in charge, will be legally obligated under Iranian domestic law to assert sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. Axios reports. The Pentagon is developing military options for what it is calling a final blow against Iran that could include an invasion by ground forces. A final blow. Ground invasion. The Pentagon is formally developing options with that name and that scope. Iran's ground forces commander responded directly. Brigadier General Ali Jahanshahi told Iranian forces that every inch of Iranian territory is being protected with the vigilance and readiness of our forces, and that all enemy movements along the borders are closely monitored, and we are prepared for any scenario. Final blow? Every inch protected. Those are the two military positions being staked out publicly on day 28, and they are being staked out on a day when Trump is also claiming talks are going very well. Let's look at the food security picture because it is the humanitarian dimension of this war that receives the least coverage and the most devastating long-term consequences. The World Food Programme's estimate for people facing acute food insecurity in 2026 is up from a baseline of 318 million across 68 countries previously forecast. The agency cites the spike in energy prices due to the Middle East fighting as having the biggest impact on food prices, with low-income countries especially vulnerable. Food prices have risen by 15% in a dozen countries, and by more than half in Venezuela, Iran, and Sudan. 318 million people already facing acute food insecurity before this war. That number is now rising because of energy price spikes caused by this war. In Africa, aid agencies are raising alarms about rising costs that threaten food security in vulnerable nations, heavily reliant on imports for food and fuel. Somalia and Sudan, both of which have faced famine in recent years, are at the highest risk of slipping into acute levels of hunger as the Middle Eastern crisis continues, according to the United Nations World Food Programme. Somalia, Sudan, countries that had nothing to do with Iran's nuclear program, with Israeli settlements, with American foreign policy in the Gulf, facing famine because of a war 4,000 miles away that raised the cost of shipping and fuel to levels their economies cannot absorb. House Democratic leaders have chosen not to force a vote on an Iran war powers resolution this week, putting off any potential vote until Congress returns from a 2-week recess in mid-April. The delay has angered progressives. Demand Progress said, "This is a moment for anti-war leadership, not hesitation." Congress is going on a 2-week recess while America fights its most expensive war since Iraq, while the Pentagon develops options for a ground invasion, and while the House War Powers resolution that might actually require congressional authorization for this conflict sits unvoted on. The Constitution requires congressional authorization for declarations of war. The War Powers resolution requires the President to notify Congress within 48 hours of committing forces and to withdraw them within 60 days without congressional approval. Day 28, no congressional vote. Congress on recess for 2 more weeks. The constitutional clock is running. The war has killed more than 1,800 people in Iran and nearly 1,100 in Lebanon. 18 people have died in Israel, while 4 Israeli soldiers have also been killed in Lebanon. 13 U.S. military members have died, as well as a number of civilians on land and sea in the Gulf region. Millions of people in Lebanon and Iran have been displaced. 1,900 in Iran, 1,100 in Lebanon, 4 weeks in, and UNICEF confirmed that at least 121 children have been killed in Lebanon alone. Here's where the facts leave us on day 28. Trump extended the energy strike deadline to April 6th, citing an Iranian government request. Iran publicly denies making any request or having any negotiations. Oil surged minutes before Trump's announcement. Israel escalated strikes on the same day Trump announced a pause. The IRGC Navy commander responsible for closing the Strait of Hormuz was killed in Bandar Abbas. Iran's parliament is writing a law to permanently codify Hormuz sovereignty and toll collection. The Pentagon is developing a final blow ground invasion option. Iran's ground forces commander vowed to protect every inch of Iranian territory. Congress went on 2-week recess without voting on the War Powers resolution. Food prices are up 15% in a dozen countries. Somalia and Sudan are at highest risk of famine. And Trump says talks are going very well. April 6th is the next deadline. 10 days. We will be here every single one of them. We will keep verifying every claim. Stay with us.